Halloween Day. I don't know about how many of you celebrate that, but it's October 31st, 2023, and we're focused on a digital world town hall and in a fun transitioning standpoint, but we'll talk a lot about that today. So today's agenda will be just update on general advancements, developments, and things that have moved forward over the last, not just 1 week, but two. And then also focused on just general questions. So we're grateful for those that are helping from a hosting standpoint. It looks like I saw Wally. I don't know if I didn't go through all of the different chat rooms, but yeah, looks like we've got Elle and Terrence in Australia may be off. And again, this is a private membership association. Some of the things we may be talking about may be forward-looking around this crazy model of basically decentralization. Some folks say it's not that complicated, and really when you use it, it's not. But some of the pieces to put it together, we wanted to help document that, and that's a piece of what this activity is all about. Hopefully this activity changes from just documentation to actually a full-blown environment where we're actually helping to govern and manage the digital world, which we'll talk a lot about, the simple model and strategy of connecting in mobile devices that the individual actually owns their identity on, and then tying into storage. If you'd like to join the questions and the live Q&A, you can go to these URLs, townhall.clear.events or rippleeffect.clear.events. Those are two separate rooms, but you're welcome to join either one of them. One of the things that we'd like to focus on is some material meetings that we've had with a very important organization that's been recognized by multiple different countries around the world. It has a history that is built upon really the kingdom of the Hawaiian Islands, and its focus is around how you can actually take the earth and community and be able to bring it together in such a way where life can actually be independent, it can be free, it can be sovereign, and you can actually live from the earth in a responsible way, in a way where humanity doesn't have to go through a process of really, I would say by the sweat of your brow, you can actually live instead of going through a process of working within a system that may be focused on a certain type of mindset around education. And if you get those educations, maybe you can be a doctor or a lawyer, or focus on systems that are really, I would call them elements of priestcraft. I would say that, the legal system and some of the elements around that, some of the judicial systems, the court systems, if you will. If you get educated inside of their systems, then you can make their money. And then in turn, you can actually go through a system that replaces all of the natural food forests, kind of like what you see here with monocropping. And then you can actually work in their system. You can make money in their systems. You can pay mortgages and interest in their systems. This system has been very eye-opening to see how many within the Pacific have focused on land and the God-given ability to actually grow things. And so when we say grow things, we're talking about using the earth and soil and seeds and life and water and fresh water that naturally comes from abundance within the mountains, or I should say I would say probably one of the most amazing parts of the world. And this last week, I watched the documentary on one of the islands here and how Everest, which we all thought was one of the biggest islands in the world, could fit into it many, 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 many times over when you look at the stature and the size. And I really look at the Pacific as an environment where it's not just a lot of talk, it's a matter of how do we stop the centralized systems and political systems from being able to overtake these existing systems that already have worked. When we talk about the Hawaiian Kingdom, it's already worked, it was just taken over. And so this last week, we had an amazing opportunity to meet with some very important individuals that helped to build the nation of Hawaii, not the Hawaiian Kingdom. They're two separate things. The Hawaiian Kingdom, the nation of Hawaii, two different teams. And when you focus on the different individuals, so for instance, these are appointments within it, and this organization or this entity or this nation of Hawaii, basically goes back to the Constitution of the United States of America. And in 1993, they got recognition. Let's see if I can even, that's right here. Here we go. So 1993, you can see where they were actually recognized. And it's not going way back to the 1700s, but specifically recognized within law to exist. And so they've started building up an ecosystem there, and just to be able to come to understand what they're doing, how they're focusing, because there's 3 or 4 different ecosystems within the Hawaiian archipelago, or a group of islands, that are focusing in on governance and really their own free ability to be a sovereign nation or independent people on their own. And working within this ecosystem of this nation of Hawaii, and then understanding the difference between it and what we talk about as the Kingdom of Hawaii, or the Hawaiian Kingdom, going back to the roots, not basing it on the Constitution and specific law within the United States of America, but going back to the actual Hawaiian Kingdom that was there before the United States of America took it over. So there are really 2 separate ecosystems. And from my own mind, and when I started talking about the educated system, I started talking about how we're really indoctrinated when we go through a learning process of understanding what's real. You know, I remember when I was starting school, I would actually every single day read the yeah, it was a Declaration of Independence. No. It was a pledge. We'd pledged the flag. So think about that. Every day we actually pledged the flag, the allegiance to the flag. And now I'm focused so on the Constitution and the Declaration, I don't even remember the specifics of what it was as a kid. And now they don't do that at all. But when you go to other countries, namely New Zealand and others, they're focused in on some of the things that were native with what was Aotearoa before it. What were some of the basic things we talk about with prayer and other things before it. So when we understand the difference between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the nation of Hawaii, it starts becoming very evident that not only are these different cultures working in parallel, but they're actually united as of a people. And for me, with a Western perspective of understanding of systems and cultures and indoctrination, if you will, it's been very eye-opening to understand, no, you can actually have different parts of ecosystems. When we look at this history, you can have these different systems that actually build their own community and their own ecosystem, and they're doing it in a very different way, but it may be with the same intent. And so it's been very eye-opening and even humbling for me to be able to be around these powerful people from a spiritual standpoint, from an ethical standpoint, and it's been a wonderful experience to be able to spend some of the time with the leaders within the nation of Hawaii. That being said, excited to be able to really separate the two in my own mind when we talk about the Hawaiian Kingdom and how nations can actually plug into that, namely nations that may have Hawaiians and that may have Americans, and really the 2 separate ecosystems that will be able to become reality within that. So this has been an eye-opening week for that. When we kind of step through some of the apps and things, you can actually still have Hawaiian Life and Hawaiian Wallet that will actually plug into other ecosystems like the nation of Hawaii. So they can actually all coexist and work together, which was another big aha in my mind's eye. We always look at, for instance, here, I won't go through this right now, that this is going to be blurred out by design. But imagine kingdoms, nations, countries, and then different states as well as counties, and then different really organizations. So you could have a decentralized autonomous organization, you can have a corporation, you can have trusts. They all can plug or become a byproduct of what this decentralized system around the digital world actually enables. But it's been eye-opening to understand the difference between a country and a nation and how nations can plug into kingdoms. And then really when we give the authority from within these kingdoms, the keys and the tokens and the elements that are therein to the right individuals that should be accountable as an individual, but then also to the right governance at the top, which is really focused on not man or some king or some queen or some president or some form of a ruler, maybe a prime minister. It's not that. It's how can technology actually help us as individuals to be able to be accountable and responsible for who we are as individuals. So understanding that and taking a step back, and really it was two massive epiphanies. One, that within these different ecosystems, for instance, the Hawaiian Islands, there's really multiple different folks that have governance or government or governing processes within what they believe is their accountability or birthright or statute. And so how can they all come together? And that's really been a key focal point of many of them are already together and united. They're just focusing on different things. And it's similar to what we talk about, where united we can accomplish anything, but divided we will literally be conquered. And that's when I look at, here in the Hawaiian Islands, there are over 300 islands, and there were many different languages that were spoken back in the day. And when you look at the Vanuatu, there were 88 islands, and there were 80 different languages. When you look at the Fijian Islands, we're talking like 3,000 and massive, like over 300 different languages. And so these are just the islands within the Pacific, 175 million square miles of ocean and islands. But when we look at humanity, you look at kind of what's happened where really centralized systems can take control, especially with what we're seeing when they divide us. They divide us not just, from a mental standpoint, but a physical standpoint as well as a verbal standpoint. Language this last week has been and not just this last week, but the last couple of weeks has been very eye-opening to understand that communication can still occur even when there's a language barrier. And that's one big thing that we're excited to announce when we look at so let's just kind of focus in right here. When we look at this site, there's a couple things that are new. One, there's a language system. So I'm going to click on Hawaiian and notice how it automatically changes. So you can see that the language is actually now in the Hawaiian language and not in English. But we can go ahead and change it back. And the neat thing about it is there's an admin side of this where the nations can actually govern themselves based upon their own languages. For instance, the Hawaiian language is one of the most unrecognized languages that humanity currently has. And so we look forward to helping that language to not be forgotten and the voices to be able to always be heard. For those of you that were not aware, and I'll go ahead and go back to English in case that's an easy way for you to understand, Hawaiian Life is a full-blown app, and Hawaiian Wallet is now a full-blown app, and it's actually available on a new Hawaiian phone. So a phone is a special edition that's built off of the 223 model set, similar to what the Clear phone here. I'll scroll down so you can kind of see this original Clear phone 220, as well as this 223, as well as the Freedom Phone frame structure. It's all the same hardware, but they're different softwares. So that software particularly, just like we talked about here, is Hawaiian Life and Hawaiian Wallet built in. That's important because these apps don't come pre-installed. You can only have one Life app per phone. And if you're already on, I'll jump back over here to the store. If you're already on a Clear phone, a Freedom phone, or an Armor phone, you literally have, whether it's Digital Life or Clear Life, pre-installed, and you can't uninstall that. It's the core of the phones. So these phones are not Google phones or Apple phones, but they have to have a Life-based app tied to them because that's how you get your 24 words. For those of you that are not aware, and this may be a new concept, I'm going to pull open clearos.app. I'm going to navigate over to the marketplace, and I'm going to click on either Digital Life or Clear Life. I don't know if Clear Life is a downloadable APK, but we'll see. Yeah, Clear Life is actually downloadable. So you see Digital Life. Let's see. You see Digital Life and Clear Life, two different applications, but they actually accomplish the same thing. Now they do it within a certain jurisdiction, and what we're talking about within a jurisdiction is these different ecosystems. So when we talk about the digital world and these nations, see how we have 1, 2, 3 different different nations that are being deployed, and they actually get their own Life app and their own wallet app. Happy to announce that the goal is we'll actually have this month, the month of November 2023, the first time ever, and I won't spill too many beans here, but the first time ever that iPhones or iOS-based devices can actually interface with this Life-based feature, function, and wallet. So historically, it's been on any Android-based phone, at least ones that have biometrics built into them. But now it's not just Clearphone or Armor Phone or Freedom Phone or Hawaiian Phone, but any Android device. And now it's going to be any Apple or iOS-based device. And as we roll them out into these different jurisdictions or ecosystems, maybe it's a country, maybe it's a nation, maybe it's a movement, you'll basically have the ability to get these different apps. And the apps will actually work within a certain type of currency. I'll scroll down a little bit here and show you what I'm talking about. So for the wallet-based system to function, it actually has, and this is just a mock-up, but you can really see it. If you actually download the Hawaiian Life app or the Hawaiian Wallet app, and on the iOS version, they'll actually be combined. There'll be some features that will be missing within the iOS app, but ultimately you can do basically the same things. You can log on, you get your cryptographic keys, you have all your digital assets, but the base actual currency within each different region will actually be tied to that. So Fijian Life, Tuvalu Life, Vanuatu Life, Hawaiian Life, Samoa Life, Saudi Life, all of these different jurisdictions that have their own currencies will basically have their own digital asset or dollar that will interface with their currencies. So as humanity starts understanding the power of decentralized systems and decentralized identity, they'll start understanding that there's actually a system for humanity that's for the betterment of the future. And they're rolled out one country or one nation or one ecosystem at a time. There is a larger movement. So for those that were not on the prior, turn that off. For those that were not on the prior event 2 weeks ago, literally we talked about a greater Idaho movement. And it's not just coming from the Pacific. By the way, there's a little town in here called Pacific City that actually has some very interesting banks and some interesting on-ramps and off-ramps that understand law of the land and law of the sea, and from the Oregon coast all the way into Idaho. So this particular map here is showing how certain counties within Oregon are looking to become a part of Idaho. So Idaho as a state, and then Idaho is connected to Utah, and Utah is connected to Arizona and New Mexico, all the way down to Texas. So imagine a movement that states or counties could actually adopt within the United States of America. So some of the things we're talking about here is a whole nother country within the US, at least a jurisdiction. And what the argument is here is, and it's not necessarily an argument, it's an opportunity for the Hawaiian people to stand up and actually govern themselves, whereas their governance was taken away from them long ago. And it's actually been recognized that their governance was taken away from them long ago. But this puts the power of voting, of identity, of meetings, of governance. Here, I'll pull up a couple of the new systems. This is also, when we come into, this is pretty powerful. But I'm not going to spend time on this just yet. I'm going to open up one of these councils here. So imagine a council where people want to get involved. They just join the council by a quick scan. So literally, if you have a Clearphone or a Freedom Phone or an Armor Phone, or if you've just got an Android phone and you've downloaded any of these Digital Life apps or Clear Life apps, actually it would just be Digital Life. By the way, if you do have an Android phone and you want to grab one of these, the way to do it is you go to Digital Life on the Google Play Store, pull it down, it'll give you your 12 words. And this is for people that don't have it. But what I'm trying to help folks understand is you can actually join councils and still have some autonomy and then have a voice. You can actually have a voice and a vote. And then the council meetings will actually start, the agendas. Let's see if I can go in. So we've got an agenda coming up. Let's see here. So this one's today. So we'll view this. So you can see what agenda items there are, and then if there's going to be motions, and then if there's votes on them. You know, you can look at them from different ways. For those that may have been involved before, this is the view prior. This is another advancement over the last 2 weeks. So literally folks can come in and say, I want to watch this, I want to review it, I want to vote on it, and they can literally just come in and actually vote on particular things. So let's find one that was actually on a prior one. Let's see if I can vote. I may not be able to vote on this one, but let's see. So what I'm going to do is show you exactly how it works. So I'm opening up a Clear phone. I'm using Clear Live. I'm just going to grab my logins, and then I'm going to say scan QR code, and then it'll automatically pull up. So it worked here, worked there. And so it won't change a lot of the numbers here because it was already approved, so to speak. That's why I voted on that particular one. But you can kind of see, you know, how that voting process works. That's how everybody actually gets a voice, and you can have a public meeting that actually gets transparency and honesty. So people can create agenda items, there can be a dialogue on it to council, and then there can be a vote. And then there's service providers that actually implement that. It's just that simple. It's not more complicated than that. So, you know, anyone can actually become a member of this new Hawaiian Kingdom. This new Hawaiian Kingdom is a digital ecosystem that actually goes back to the roots of what the Hawaiian Kingdom was based upon long ago. So we look forward to learning from the past as well as things that worked, but leveraging technology to enable, you know, us to leapfrog over the existing centralized systems that have really taken away privacies, freedoms, sovereignty, and ultimately choice. So with that being said, I know we went over a lot of different topics, but before we're out of time, I want to just give folks an opportunity to ask any questions, provide feedback, guidance as we try and kind of move through this meeting today. Thoughts, feedback?
Yeah, Michael, I have a question. With regard to the digital wallets and the different ecosystems, will you be able to do commerce or exchange currencies in the different ecosystems? Like if I wanted, like I have a digital, I got a Clear wallet, would I be able to purchase something, say, from someone from the Hawaiian Kingdom using my Clear wallet?
Really, really good question. So there's two types of transactions. One where people can actually receive money for some value, and then two where they pay it. So we already live in that system today. There's also foreign exchange transactions where you can go from one currency to another currency. When I say currency, I'm talking dollars, coins, rewards. There's tons of different value exchange. They have their own meaning. You know, in the existing systems, they'll get things very complicated. But the simple answer is you can go from one currency to another currency. But what they need is what's called onboarding or offboarding. So on-ramp or off-ramp. And to create those, you basically work with a local currency. So let's say that there's in Fiji, or Fiji is probably a really good example. So let's say the Reserve Bank of Fiji says there's a physical dollar in Fiji, and then they want to authorize a digital dollar within Fiji. And they have one-to-one liquidity, or you can cash them in. So I can take a digital dollar and I can turn it into a physical dollar. I can take a physical dollar, turn it into a digital dollar. So let's just say, and some people talk about that as a stable coin, but it's really a dollar within a jurisdiction of a currency. Imagine that can actually exist. And then imagine that someone wants to go from a different currency. So instead of a Fijian dollar, they want to go into maybe, let's say, US dollar. Well, you have to have that US dollar equivalent of a US dollar physical to digital. And one of the things that's really, a lot of the banking ecosystems don't want this because it provides ultimate transparency around what is actually happening financially. For instance, you may have heard of reserve banking or in 2008, the whole financial crisis was based upon really getting out of whack with people being able to pay a payment based upon loaning money based upon deposits. So if someone put a deposit into a bank, $1, then a bank can turn around and loan out 10 times. So it's called fractional fractional lending. And where they could literally say $1 in deposit is worth $10 in loan. And then when people didn't pay the loans back, the house of cards came down. So if you have an on-ramp and an off-ramp that does $1 for $1, you're never going to have the house of cards. But what the banking systems don't like, and this is, a lot of people have asked me a lot of questions. This is a really simple lesson. The banking systems don't like the honesty and transparency that decentralized systems or blockchain-based systems provide. That's why they want to control decentralization, or they want to centralize the control of decentralization. I want you to really kind of take a step back, and your question is super duper good, but think about things in what we're actually doing as far as humanity. When we look at this image, we're in a time and a dispensation when we can actually move from one planet to maybe to another planet. That's what we're starting to say, is how can we travel through space? Is it going to the moon? Is it going to Mars? Is it going to other ecosystems? Is it growing up in a, imagine everyone that we all are today. We're all born on this same earth. We don't know a different, one of the other things that's kind of crazy this last week, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but they've actually successfully cloned humans and grown them in an environment that's not natural. So imagine what's happening within humanity is not only are we possibly not growing the same way in a womb, but they're creating fake alternative wombs. And then they're cloning based upon genes that they want. Some people would say that's just not right. Some people would say that's playing God, if you believe in that. And when you start understanding that, you start thinking a little differently around, we were all literally born in a process. Some of us were born in a hospital, some of us weren't. Some of us were born in an ecosystem where we didn't have pain. Some of us were born with just systems that actually had to adapt or grow. But what I'm trying to turn on a perspective of is, imagine if we're actually space traveling. So right within the last decade, we've seen rocket ships that have been able to be reused. Is that a big deal? Could we do that before? Was the theory and the technology out before? Is it getting perfected? Can we communicate now with folks? For instance, just yesterday, 2 days ago, maybe it was 3 days ago, I was made aware of some of the different jurisdictions that we're talking about where they didn't have internet before, and now they're getting containers full of these devices that are basically Starlink-based devices. So the communication capability and the education is very different than what was even a generation ago, or as long as these different islands have actually been in existence. So we're talking about knowledge coming down, environments changing, and it's not just on this sphere that we get to call Earth, but in other different parts of the world. And what's important to think about that is how are they going to actually communicate or transact? Historically, we always thought about money as being this important resource or asset, and what we're all searching for and what it's all about. But really, it's not. It's all about choice. And what's being compromised is the ability to choose. And the reason it's being compromised is decentralized, or digital systems are literally enabling people to have control over other people. Maybe it's done through money. Maybe it's done through, I can't figure out how to provide this much value, whether it's a service, to be able to make this much in income, to be able to pay for a lifestyle that they want. Maybe it's a house, maybe it's a car, maybe it's whatever. The point that I'm trying to drive at is it's all about control. And decentralization and the model in the system takes away the control from the few and the centralized secret combinations, and it gives it to everyone. Kind of like how we just showed you how this voting process here can actually work. What's one of the biggest things we're seeing within society right now? We're seeing a sitting president that went through an election. I'm not going to talk about election fraud. I'm not going to talk about systems. I'm not going to talk about all of the political rhetoric. But what I'm going to say is a digital system enabled voting, and none of us have transparency on what those votes were. This system that I just showed you, where you can actually have a council meeting with a particular topic, with a particular presentation or presenter that can say, you know, here's a video, this is a recording, would you like to vote on this? Yes, no. And then I showed you how you can actually vote on it in real time. And those votes can cryptographically be proved. So just think about the theories of what we're talking about that are actually in practice in front of you with what I'm showing you, and how that can actually get adopted throughout humanity and change the control. So when you ask your financial question, Bob, about can I actually transact from one currency to another currency? And I said there's really two different elements to that. One is you have to do the on-ramp and off-ramp. So you have to say we're changing how all of the systems work. So for instance, on this call, we've talked a lot about a quantum. Let me see if I can pull up a. Yeah, so I'm going to go to quantum.gov, and this is actually an initiative that the United States of America and some of the financial systems behind it talk about this QIS system. So this quantum information science system that does all of these new types of financial governance systems. And ultimately, we can either be a slave to how technology and the digital ecosystem can enable us, or we can actually be free. And the goal is to intelligently organize technology so that we can be free, so that we don't have to be controlled. And the way that they're trying to control it right now, and I'm going back to your question again and again, because it's really important, because humanity, we think along money. We think that money, and that's why if everybody looks at what the world would call crypto or blockchain, or even touches on decentralization, they think about money. How can I get rich? How can I make money? How can I do something where I get a certain amount of value back in a rapid space and time? And I would argue that really the systems create their own money. These secret combinations have taken over the systems based upon, and I'm going to pull up some slides. Let's see if I've got. Susan, it should be, yeah, you just have to click on the screen. It's there. You just got to find it. So I'm going to pull open. There you go. Okay, so this is a slide that talks about secret combinations, if you haven't seen it before. And they're in different industries. And these are just four of many industries: big tech, big media, big health / big pharma. And they take over government. You've heard of lobbyists. You've heard of, I won't even mention some of the names, but you understand these different industries. For instance, big tech is really where, when I look at the different clear companies, what they focused on over the last 13 years is competing and replacing the elements that are materially important around the technology industry as it relates to humanity. So competing directly product by product, feature by feature with Apple. Some of them is just as good, some of it's not. I would actually argue that Clear Signal and some of the communication systems in the future is going to way leap over some of the iMessage stuff that Apple has, but we'll just leave it at 90% now. But you can see how competing with big tech and replacing the big tech players that are centralized players, namely Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, IBM, GoDaddy, and these companies that basically have hundreds of thousands of employees, billions and trillions in revenue, and market caps from how they have actually gotten to that point around public companies. And this is also how secret combinations work with the financial systems. So big finance and the stock exchanges and the patent systems, they've all basically played within these same roles. So with that being said, you look at some of the clear companies and what they do to build competitive technologies that then open source them in such a way where future generations can literally utilize them for good. And right now it may not really be understood, but when a lot of other service providers start standing on some of the technology that's built in to these different companies, which there'll be a time where that becomes very, very relevant and understood. So I'll stop blabbing there. Take another question if anyone has one. Thought, comment, feedback, anything?
Hey, Michael, I just have one question. The retail service providers, are they aware of their role in the decentralized space?
When you say,
or is this something that...
When you say retail service providers, can you expound?
Oh, sorry, the service providers.
Yeah, so for instance, one of the biggest ones we're actually starting to see, so this is the digital world and the different services that can be offered. And then there's different providers that can offer different services. So I'll go ahead and click on this. So there's different companies that are already involved. And some of them, it's just a technology play. For instance, Starlink, there's a technology play. T-Mobile, a service provider on delivery pay. Even Ripple and Stellar, there's a parallel path that's being worked with some of the technology that they've helped bring to the world, but it actually is truly focused on decentralized systems. GSMA, there's the IMEI blocks that are there. The goal is to free a lot of the centralized, because they're literally centralizing systems. So you have to use a lot of these centralized companies, and you open the technology and you organize the models in such a way where service providers can actually jump into it. And I'll give you an example. So if we come into, let's say, services within the Hawaiian Kingdom, you'll notice there's only, 2, 4, 6, 8, so 16 services here, compared to the digital world where you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, almost 24 or 25 different services. So there's only half of them that are being run there. If we look at Tuvalu, their services are 2, 4, 6, 8. So they've got one more than the Hawaiian Kingdom. And the service providers, they're still maturing from a delivery standpoint. So for instance, some of the things that the Hawaiian Kingdom is working on is namely around identity. So when we look at, maybe it's a driver's license, maybe it's a birth certificate, maybe it's a marriage certificate, a death certificate, and then the payment stuff that we touched on with Bob's question. How do you create a company? How can a company basically have assets? How do you do asset management? How do you do land management? How do you do dispute resolution? How do you register different things? Maybe it's a car, maybe it's a boat, maybe it's a weapon. How do you actually govern? So these types of systems can enable countries or kingdoms or nations or even just movements to be able to have technologies like what we looked at here, where you can create meetings and voting and councils can actually govern and real time. For instance, here in the Hawaiian Islands, since the fires in Maui, it's been very evident to see how counties and states are either transparent or not transparent to the people that they should be serving, which creates a real reality around, if they're not serving the people, then that's tyranny, especially when they're taxed and supposedly paid for. And in this new system, you can actually see where a dollar is spent. You can see, let's say a tax is paid, and taxing is a whole nother topic. But let's say that a fee is paid. Let's say it's a sales tax. Let's say it's a sales tax on alcohol, and it goes to education or it goes to roads. There's a lot of topics that are within that. How do you actually know that it's actually happened? Within these new decentralized systems, the transparency and honesty will actually be there. What a lot of these governmental systems don't like is that honesty and transparency, the accountability of really what is transpired. So it's neat to be able to be a part of rolling these systems out and to have humanity. It'll be interesting to see what actually happens. So I hope that's you kind of looked at the different services. You can see how there's different services that are being built out. And is it mature? No, it's very early, still building out the system so that folks can actually start coming on board with it. But I look forward to seeing some of these other systems. It looks like there's some other questions or hands that are going up. Any thoughts, comments, feedback? Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, great. I asked a question already and it's in the chat.
Go ahead and
I
repeat
don't
it.
know.
Go
I
ahead.
don't know. Do you see it in the chat?
Yeah,
it's-
so there's a service provider, that one of the core service providers, it was actually on one of those lists that literally you looked at it for 2 days. It was actually longer than that. And we question whether or not, and for instance, this particular service provider goes back to the original. I don't know if you're familiar with the Baby Bells and how it was all separated, and then how AT&T was basically formed. But
I remember a little bit of it. Yeah.
we talk about, what's a simple way to put this?
I thought it was 2 days.
There-
Maybe I
Well,
noticed
yeah, but it's not. It doesn't matter whether the time frame. What I'm trying to drive at is answering your question directly around centralized ecosystems that create monopolies
Mhm.
and how they actually, for instance, the bails were, you get different politicians and legislation systems in that enable monopolies to not exist, but then you get them where it shifts the other way. And what we're seeing is these big companies that actually have the last mile or the cellular connections, they can literally control how communication happens. A lot of the people, like if you're using Clear Cellular, and then that comes with a phone number, but if you're using Clear Signal, it is enabled by a phone number, but when there's an outage or an issue with the phone number, you can still communicate. So what we're doing is decoupling those phone numbers with other voice, data, and textation systems. So
right. Because when it was going on, as long as I was in a Wi-Fi, I could speak to, use Signal to text and actually talk to others.
You got
it. I could use, access the internet, but that's only if I was at work or at home in a Wi-Fi signal.
That's exactly right. But imagine the control that these centralized organizations have if they don't want people to run on their network that are running decentralized systems. So for instance, what we've seen, and I won't be specific, but I will be
But they let other third-party providers do that, like Mint does that, I'm sure. They all vendor contract, Pure Talk and a whole bunch of others.
What you're actually finding is they're condensing all of it. So you bring up Mint. Mint was actually purchased by T-Mobile.
Oh, it's one of their babies. Okay.
Yeah.
So they don't object to that because it's one of their little babies.
You got it. So, but what we're doing,
and Patriot and any other, of these lower cost services, they're just buying them up or have already acquired them, and they're just showing another face.
That's exactly right. And so there are resellers that focus within different ecosystems that are authorized. And what they do is they basically, and this is happening throughout the whole, centralized cellular industry, where reseller programs are being targeted. And the way they get targeted is exactly what you just saw. So the 2 days that you're mentioning, it's exactly what they do is they just pop a nice surprise, we just did this. Oh, there's nobody to communicate with. Oh, you want to be able to do that transaction? Well, we can't do that unless you talk with these people, or that didn't work. Oh, you did it all automated. Oh, that's not an issue. Well, you have to route it through these people. Literally, there was 2.5 days of finger pointing. There wasn't issues. There was not a payment issue for a long, literally, they couldn't point fingers at anything for almost 2.5 days.
So they're just playing a little, oopsie.
Yeah. And so what we end up with is people that say, I'm either committed to this, or I don't want anything to do with something that can actually take something as precious as a phone number away, which, to your point, your communication systems would actually still work, right? Let's see if I can pull up, for instance, these applications here. Let's see if I can go back. Every one of the applications that you see here work off of, let me let this load up. Every one of these systems here work off of derived keys from your private key. So the 12 words, so you don't need, a Google or an Apple or a cellular provider to run these different systems. It's your data, it's your identity, it's your assets, and it doesn't matter what they do. What you'll also see, and within this last week, we also saw X start offering some new offerings, primarily as it related around the same type of topic. Video calls and voice calls that don't need phone numbers. It's the same core technology that's underneath these pieces, and you'll start seeing moving off of what's called the PTSN or the POTS-based networks and moving into these other identity systems. Identity and control is the new holy grail. It's the new oil. It's the new currency. It really is.
Yeah, I know. We talked about that a year ago. Privacy's gone. It's identity we have to protect.
You got it. That's exactly right. And that's why everything that we're talking about is so relevant and so important. So, the good question, and thank you for just being on that side that says, you know what, I can see what's going on, and we'll see a future that hopefully doesn't have these types of realities. We're working hard to be able to build systems that will parallel it. So, for instance, it's not with one provider, and this is what we're doing to combat it. For those of you that have maybe a SIM and it's got a phone number that's a special number to you, you can take that phone number and put it onto instead of one SIM like a Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, Vodafone, Optus, Telstra, you can actually link it to a separate service that then points to the service providers. And that's what we're building out. So you can take your phone number and you link it to the SIM, and that SIM can direct to different cellular providers. So we're not beholden.
That's something that we'll get taught how to do sometime down the line a little bit.
The goal is to make it so that it's very simple, where all you have to do is just say, this is the phone number, and then you click on a button and a SIM pops. Or a lot of phones are moving to the SIM-less based phones. And one of the things when we built the existing hardware lines, so when I pull open the store, I've
heard about eSIMs.
eSIMs will basically track you much deeper than the current systems do. What it does is it takes a SIM number and it links it, so an SIME number with an IMEI number. So the IMEI number is like a MAC address or an identifier for the actual phone itself. And every phone line that you have, so if you have multiple lines, like every Clear phone, Armor phone, Freedom phone, all of them have two different lines and two different IMEI numbers. Now, those IMEI numbers are unique to the phone, and the SIMs get added in as the SIM card numbers, okay? So when you actually electronically do it, they're bonding it. And so what that means is one of these organizations, namely GSMA, which is, if you've heard of GSM, the GSM network is what G1, G2, G3, G4, G5 all comes from. It's a standards-based body. That standard-based body has an association. Remember, we talk about associations. Wherever else have you heard associations? A legal association, like a bar, a medical association, also education tied, and associations around driver's licenses. These are all private membership associations. When we talk about the digital world, we're just following the same structure that they basically do. Whenever we read this membership document here, we're focused on decentralization. That's what this association does. But when we really are talking, what we're really talking about is how do the secret combinations, when they pull open political parties and control different governments and the financial reserves behind the governments and the associations behind that, namely the GSM. So when I pull this open here, when we talk about these providers here, click into this, you'll see this GSMA. The goal is this GSMA is actually what issues the IMEI numbers that then link the SIMs to it. And then when you actually activate like a Google phone and you put in your username and password, which by the way, they also control, and a two-factor systems, which they also control, you're basically getting linked not just with your phone and your phone number, but all of the data associated with you and how you use that phone. And all of these secret combinations already know all that. So the goal is to create applications like this digital life, which starts, that then builds decentralized keys with derived keys that only the individual owns, and then you can import or export, namely import, from the centralized system. So your contacts, your calendars, your photos, your phones, even, and this is one other requirement we're currently working on, even where, let's say you get a phone call and you don't want them to call you again, you add them to a blacklist, the ability for you to move that to your next phone. Whenever you lose your phone or you upgrade your phone, you plug in your 12 words that you originally got, which you're the only one that knows those. And if you lose them, you're the only one that can actually get them back. And today, in the future, we're focusing on genealogical maps that link to your contacts, that then you can actually, if you ever lost your 12 words, now this does not work today, so you gotta don't lose your 12 words. But if in the future you lose your 12 words, we're building it in such a way where your friends and your families can actually help validate and rebuild your 12 words so you get your identity back. So once those types of things happen, or people actually get paid for their identity, we're talking game over. Until then, it's going to be bumps along the way, and we have to make sure that we're fiscally accountable and we're fighting these centralized systems to be able to have uptime. I can tell you that there was no warning. This outage, we did not have any kind of understanding, at least I personally didn't, that there was going to be an issue like this. Was there dialogue around, does this need to balance out, and why is this happening? And in many ways, to think about it, we're actually literally being charged crazy amounts. It's kind of a ransom. It's like you either pay this or nothing. And it's like, well, that's not right, but here we go. And in the end, centralized systems will fail. Maybe it'll be in our lifetime, maybe it won't. But the many will actually see what's happening. And what's been surprising to me as an individual, it's focused in technology, is how many people haven't seen it. How many people have not seen the messages? Like, there's another gentleman, passed away this last week. And if I'll just say this word, could I be any more vaccinated? Do you remember who said that?
No, I don't remember who that was.
It's Matthew Perry. And
yeah. Okay.
I'm not going to say it was because of that or as a byproduct of it, but all I'm saying is it's been eye-opening to see how many people see what's really happening and are doing something about it versus people that are on the opposite perspective. And then there's a lot that are in between that said, yeah, I thought that was the right thing. Actually, a gentleman in the same office that I'm in today, he said, I got vaccinated, and it was the first time I actually felt violated, and he used some very vulgar words that I'd never felt before. And he says, I just don't know how to undo it. I don't know how to go back to how I felt before. And, this is just his perspective of how he felt, which is a different conversation, which we try not to get into those. You already understand the perspectives there. But,
yeah,
the key is, how can we just continually, consistently, with a solid cadence, just like everyone that shows up on these meetings every single week, and you see results and you see feedback and you see, it may not be large numbers, but anything real material that's happened within society. Look at a light bulb. It happened with very small numbers of people, but a lot of consistency and trying, and a lot of failure. So we're grateful for those that see the failure like they did this last week. It's also been painful and noisy. I sent a message into one of the leader that runs the support and operations side today, and I said, what kind of noise are you seeing? What kind of folks are you seeing that are giving up, that are moving on, that no longer want to be involved. And it's been humbling to see how many people are just like you that just say, you know what? I know something's going on. This isn't right. And we'll stick it out and we'll see through.
Well, we're kind of a unique group here, you know. I won't get into that, but we are a bit of a unique group. I have only one other person that I'm in touch with. Usually when this kind of thing happens, like last year or this year, I didn't even pay attention to the phone all day long. It was just quiet and I'm really happy. And then I get a text from her on Signal and she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know, is something going on?
Yeah, exactly.
And she relies on me to reach out somewhere. And I'm like, okay, well, I know probably everybody's going bananas, but I'll throw a message out and see what's going on. But I really did appreciate, please tell the support guys, I really, really, really did appreciate getting a message ping in the Clear Support app that, you know, everything's settling down. It's going to be okay very shortly. So I telephone called my friend and she answered the phone. She said, oh, phew, that's a relief. I said, yeah, well, since I'm calling you and you're answering the phone, we're both okay now. Have a nice day, honey. And she's 3 states away from me. I've never met her face to face.
That's awesome. That's so funny. Yeah,
She's a little bit more freaky. She's, you know, whatever you guys might hear from her, I'm getting 10x the amount of, you know, what's going on?
Yeah, totally.
Calm down. This is Natiri in Avatar. Calm people, calm.
Exactly. I don't know about you, but I too, and this is not an excuse or even justification, but I've had my number for probably over 30 years. Actually, I think 31 years, and 1992 and 93. And
everybody and their brother and their dog knows your number, right?
So you got it. So a lot of people know the number and the spam folks and all the other troll calls.
And last time when it was out for, I think it took 3 weeks to get everybody's new SIM cards delivered. And after it was in there, it was still peace and quiet. All the scammers disappeared. I said, yeah, their electronic systems probably were registering that the number's not in service. So I'm off everybody's list for a time being. And it's remained quiet for months.
That's exactly
And so
right.
this time I go, okay, 2-day outage, 3-day outage. Okay, that's just telling them that this is not a working number anymore.
Isn't it neat how that works? I for me it was a piece that I didn't have all of the noise, because I'm one that I'll just answer every call, as crazy as that is. And then when I find a scammer, I put them on a blacklist. But the automated systems that you're talking about, they basically, and this is one of the services we hope to have a solution for in the future. Basically what you do is you just link, if they're not in your contacts, it doesn't come through the same way. So it could even, if they're not,
it shows up as a scam likely, but it's just AT&T's system or other, which is I think better than the T-Mobile.
To be honest with you, that's the one feature that I would actually miss if I moved off of AT&T over to T-Mobile, is that spam likely, because I get at least 5 to 6 of those a day, and just like you, I just felt free. But on the flip side of it, the Clear Signal technology, absolute communication, and I too am grateful for the support team. They trust me. They don't like it when that stuff happens, but they sure step up to the plate. And I'm grateful.
I know. That's why you should just tell them for me. I really appreciated getting a message, and I did ping them back that, okay, we're all good here, and which I got a response back, thumbs up. Thanks for letting us know. It's like, okay, we're all good. Everybody can get back to business.
Totally. Well, good comments, and thank you for
explaining all that. I mean, I was suspecting, okay, it's shenanigans again. Here we go again.
And hopefully this thing that's concerning is we've been flagged as a reseller, which it's basically that's why we look at it as it's a private membership association delivering a service, and that's not a reseller. And so we've got arguments to be made, documents to be signed, and we'll stand up for truth. We will. But in the end, it's and that's one of the things we actually saw as a positive. And why I won't be specific with names, but when you start looking at some of these different companies that are cellular providers worldwide, they do have leanings towards right or left sides. And,
Of course they do.
So we've got to operate in the world, but not be of the world. But at the same time, uptime in communications is very important. It's very valuable. So thank you for just being loyal and for your asking your question the way that you did. Totally appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah, I tried to be very mild about it.
Yeah, it was perfect. We'll go ahead and go to any other questions, thoughts, comments, feedback before we wrap
Hey,
up
Michael,
today.
I can't hear the other room, so I'm unsure if this question was asked, something about the Cyber Monday sale. Is that live at the moment?
Yeah, good question. So the question was, for those that aren't in the room, this Cyber Monday sale, so it's actually live on the site. I don't think it's live in production, but we will go live in production here soon. So just wanted to make sure that this is active. It's only on the 620, 623, which is a new image. This will actually have a new image, and there'll be some new special editions that you'll see coming out, but take advantage of this. If you have, any kind of special plans before then, we figured why wait? But at the same time, these are all Clear United eligible. The eligibility is still there. The payouts are still there. So you got to make sure.
And is it on the 623 or the 624?
It's only on the 623, 620 through the 623.
I think there might be a little error there when you go and click into the actual phone.
Mm-hmm.
It will show the 624, not the 623.
Got it.
So
got it.
yeah.
Wally, where do you click to get that?
Well, when you look through the phones and you look, like when I looked through for the 623,
you can get to the 624 here, but it doesn't tie to that discount program. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, okay. So the 623 is coming down the pipeline. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, this 623 is basically a model of a software stack that's on top of the 620 frame. The 624 is a brand new hardware software delivery services model. It's a brand new model, whereas this 620, this is the old software build, and we're announcing this new 623 that will have a new software addition to it.
Okay, awesome.
So
that clears that up. Yeah.
Okay. Next question,
Thank you.
Thought, comment, feedback, advice, recognition, negative feedback, anything. Okay. We'll go ahead and wrap up today. Thank you for taking the time. We'll see you next week. If you'd like to join the Hawaiian Council, just send in a chat message and we'll send you the location on where that would be. Thank you for being you. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.